He said his heart had stopped beating, that his blood was turning to powder, that the only cure was fresh human blood. His name was Richard Trenton Chase, but the world would come to know him by another name, the Vampire of Sacramento. The man who believed blood was his only salvation.
Richard Trenton Chase was born on May 23, 1950, in Sacramento, California. The first child of Richard Sr. and Beatrice Chase, his early years were marred by parental conflict. His mother accused his father of poisoning her, cheating on her, and violating her in her sleep, paranoias that foreshadowed her son's fate. From a young age, Chase exhibited troubling behavior. By age 5, he showed all 3 warning signs of the infamous McDonald triad: bedwetting, animal cruelty, and fascination with fire, often linked to future violent offenders. Though these early warning signs loomed large, Chase's outward appearance seemed normal. He was sociable in school and even threw birthday parties attended by dozens of classmates. But by adolescence, something shifted. He became withdrawn, turned to drugs like LSD and marijuana, and discovered a deeply shameful secret. He was impotent. His inability to perform sexually haunted him. He began to fantasize about power, about control. He pasted his face onto old outlaw photos, insisting he was part of the James Younger gang. At night, he'd crank the heat and strip naked, then open the windows. Richard Chase's internal chaos was no longer contained. The spiral had begun, and it was only going to get darker.
Richard Chase's spiral from troubled teen to full-blown psychotic didn't happen overnight, but the signs were there, and they were terrifying. By the early 1970s, Chase had dropped out of college. He drifted between unstable jobs and toxic living arrangements. Former roommates recalled bizarre behavior. He wandered naked around the apartment, blocked his bedroom door with furniture to keep intruders out, and stared blankly into nothing for hours. He accused his mother of poisoning his food. He believed someone had stolen his pulmonary artery, and most disturbing, he thought his skull bones were moving. To observe this, he shaved his head. His obsession with his body turned into an obsession with blood. He believed he was dying, inside and out, and that only drinking blood could save him. It started with small animals. He'd buy rabbits, blend their organs with Coca-Cola, and drink the concoction. Later, he injected himself with rabbit's blood, nearly killing himself with septic shock. This incident led to his second involuntary institutionalization. Inside the Beverly Manor Psychiatric Hospital, his behavior shocked even the staff. He tore the heads off birds and drank their blood. He stole syringes to extract blood from therapy dogs. His nickname among staff? Dracula. Yet despite all this, Chase was deemed no longer a threat to society and was released in 1976 back into the care of his mother. It would be one of the deadliest misjudgments in California's psychiatric history. Worse still, Chase's mother weaned him off his prescribed medication without doctor approval. She thought it made him zombie-like. What it really did was keep the monster inside asleep. Now, free from oversight and without medication, Richard Chase was about to act on his delusions. And for Sacramento, the nightmare was just beginning.
Once out of the institution and off his meds, Richard Chase descended further into a private world of delusion, fear, and grotesque self-preservation. He believed his blood was evaporating, his stomach was backwards, and his heart was no longer beating. The solution, in his mind, was simple: consume blood or die. He began frequenting rabbit farms, buying live rabbits, and consuming them raw. He believed their blood would restore him. When questioned by his father about the rabbits in his apartment, Chase casually explained that he was eating them. His father, used to his son's bizarre behavior, didn't probe further. From rabbits, Chase escalated to dogs. He bought puppies, hanged them, disemboweled them, and drank their blood. Sometimes he ate their organs. Neighbors would later say they saw Chase bringing animals into his apartment, but never saw them again. His delusions deepened. Chase believed Nazi UFOs were following him. He became convinced his mother and sister were controlling his mind. He stopped allowing anyone into his apartment, not even family. He communicated with his mother through a crack in the door. Inside, he was building his own shrine to madness. Walls and floors splattered with animal blood, refrigerator shelves lined with organs, and stacks of medical books covered in notes and cut-out images of anatomy. One day in 1977, Chase was found naked and smeared in blood on a Native American reservation in Nevada. In his truck, authorities discovered a bucket with a liver inside. He claimed the blood was seeping out of his skin. The liver, he said, was his. It turned out to be a cow. He was not charged. But the line between fantasy and reality had been completely obliterated. The next time blood was spilled, it would be human.
By December 1977, Richard Chase's grip on reality was all but gone. The sounds in his head grew louder. The voices told him people were after him, poisoning him, plotting against him. He stopped trying to silence them and began acting on their commands. On December 29, 1977, Chase committed his first known murder. It was broad daylight, a quiet Sacramento street. 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin, a father of two and an engineer, was unloading groceries with his wife when a sudden pop rang out. Griffin collapsed to the pavement. His wife, panicked, thought he'd suffered a heart attack, but it wasn't his heart. It was a .22 caliber bullet that had pierced it. Witnesses reported seeing a rusted brown Ford speeding away. It had been a random drive-by shooting. The killer didn't know Griffin. He didn't care. Chase later admitted that the murder had been triggered by rage after his mother refused to let him come over for Christmas. He felt rejected, alone, poisoned by betrayal. So he drove through the neighborhood, gun in hand, and pulled the trigger at the first person he saw. At the time, the police were baffled. Griffin had no known enemies, no reason to be targeted. The case went cold, temporarily. But the killing had awakened something in Chase. Taking a life gave him a taste of power he hadn't felt in years. It fed the monster. The delusion that he needed blood to survive, that murder could keep him alive, was now cemented in his psyche. 2 weeks later, Chase tried to break into several homes. He didn't pick them at random. If the door was locked, he walked away. If it was unlocked, he believed it was an invitation. The vampire was testing his prey.
On January 23, 1978, just weeks after his first kill, Richard Chase struck again. And this time, it was no drive-by. It was personal, up close, monstrous. Teresa Wallen was 3 months pregnant. That day, she was taking out the trash at her suburban Sacramento home. As she stepped back inside, she had no idea Chase was watching. No idea her door was unlocked. No idea a man who believed blood was fuel was about to step over her threshold. He fired his .22 pistol through the screen door. The first shot hit her hand. The second struck her cheek, shattering her jaw. The final bullet pierced her skull, sending her to the floor. But for Chase, it didn't end there.
Wearing rubber gloves, he entered the home. He retrieved a butcher knife from Teresa's kitchen. Then he violated her corpse, mutilating her abdomen, slicing through her organs, her spleen removed, kidneys dislodged and rearranged beneath her liver. He cut off her nipple, then used an old yogurt cup to drink her blood. He smeared dog feces from the yard into her mouth. The horror of the scene defied understanding. Blood coated the floors and walls. The body, desecrated, opened like an autopsy. A young life, pregnant with another, extinguished in a moment of pure evil. Her husband, a truck driver, returned home later that day. He opened the door, saw only a glimpse of her remains, and screamed. Her eyes were open. Her tongue was out. The terror frozen on her face haunted detectives for years. This wasn't madness. This wasn't a psychotic break. This was a ritual. Richard Chase had just begun to feed. 4 days after the murder of Teresa Wallin, Richard Chase's thirst returned. But this time, he didn't just want blood. He wanted company in death. On January 27, 1978, Chase entered the home of Evelyn Maroth, a 38-year-old divorced mother of two. She was babysitting her 22-month-old nephew, David Ferreira, and expecting a visit from her friend, Dan Meredith, who was battling a brain tumor. Her 6-year-old son, Jason, was home too. What followed was one of the most gruesome mass murders in California history. Chase first encountered Meredith, shooting him twice in the head as he entered. Then he turned his gun on Evelyn and little Jason. All were killed execution style. But the violence didn't stop at death. Chase dragged Evelyn's body to the bedroom. There, he mutilated her with a knife from her own kitchen. He stabbed her repeatedly in the anus, punctured her uterus, and removed several internal organs. He performed necrophilia, and investigators later found semen in her mutilated body, a chilling contradiction to his earlier impotence. Next, he turned to baby David. He shot him in the crib, sliced open his skull, and drank his blood. When a knock came at the door, it was Jason's friend, Tracy Grangard, arriving for a scheduled play date. Chase panicked. He fled, taking the baby's body with him. Inside the house, blood soaked the floors and walls. Police found 2 knives inside, a third tossed outside. In the bathroom, the tub was full of blood. Was Evelyn bathing when he entered? Or had Chase bathed in her blood? He took baby David's corpse. There, he decapitated the child, ate parts of his brain, and left the remains in a box. For Chase, this wasn't horror. It was survival. The horror at the Myrith residence was beyond anything local detectives had seen. Blood drenched every surface. Bodies, mutilated, scattered. And one thing was immediately clear. The baby was missing. Detective Ray Biondi called it a house of carnage. Seasoned officers were shaken. 6-year-old Jason Myrith, found lying in his new playdate clothes, struck a haunting chord with Biondi. He had a son the same age. And Evelyn's mutilated body, splayed across the bed, told investigators one thing. This was the same killer who had taken Teresa Wallin. But now they had more evidence, handprints, bloody shoe prints, and a chilling profile. The FBI was brought in. Profiler Robert Ressler, known for pioneering criminal profiling, helped identify their suspect. His analysis? A disheveled white male, in his 20s, severely mentally ill, likely with a background of animal cruelty and social isolation. Most chilling of all, he wouldn't stop. Witnesses reported seeing a man in an orange ski parka knocking on doors the day before the Myrith murders, asking for newspapers. Others described blood on his clothes and sunken, lifeless eyes. These clues sparked something in Nancy Holden, a woman who had recently encountered a strange man at the store. He knew her late boyfriend's name, mentioned high school memories, and wore that same orange ski parka. Then she realized it was Richard Chase, someone she'd known years ago. Police ran his name. His history of institutionalization, animal abuse, and bizarre behavior immediately raised flags. Surveillance began. On January 29, 1978, officers surrounded his apartment. At first, he refused to open the door, but when police pretended to leave, Chase stepped out and they tackled him to the ground. He resisted arrest. He was armed, and still, baby David was missing. The clock was ticking.
Richard Chase was finally in custody, but his arrest only deepened the nightmare. When investigators entered his Sacramento apartment, they were stunned. Blood stained the floors, the walls, the ceiling. The refrigerator was filled with body parts and animal organs, some human, some decomposing. Cups and bowls held congealed blood. Several dog collars were found, but no dogs. Police also recovered Chase's calendar. On the dates of the Wallen and Miroth murders, he had written one word: today. He had written it dozens more times for upcoming dates in 1978. 2 months later, the body of baby David Ferreira was discovered. It had been stuffed into a cardboard box, discarded in a garbage bin like refuse. His skull was split. His brain had been eaten. Chase was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder. In 1979, he stood trial. His defense pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. They argued his delusions, UFOs, Nazis, soap dish poisoning, had made him psychotic and unable to tell right from wrong. But the prosecution pointed to the gloves Chase wore, the locked doors he respected, and his efforts to hide evidence. He knew what he was doing. The jury agreed. Richard Trenton Chase was convicted and sentenced to death in the gas chamber. He was housed in San Quentin. But even among killers, Chase was feared. Inmates begged him to kill himself. On December 26, 1980, he did just that, overdosing on antidepressants he'd secretly hoarded. When guards found him, he was face down, with notes nearby written in code and a message about stopping his heart. He died, believing his blood had turned to dust, and only death could set him free. But the legacy of his crimes remains, etched in blood, horror, and silence. Richard Chase didn't just kill, he consumed. If this chilling story shocked you, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more disturbing true crime cases, turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think truly drove Richard Chase to become a real-life vampire?